And out of all that, I only got one plant. Smell the roots.
That smells really good.
Sniff, pass. So just think about what that reminds you of. Not necessarily when it's smaller because the leaf size varies. Sometimes it's like, you know how we look at, there could be really old, short people, and there could be really young, tall people. Plants are like that. They have a lot of variations in size, but it's more like stage is different than size. So depending on what nutrients they're uptaking, they could be really small leaves, but very old plant, or they could be very big leaves and very young plant. So it's more about the stage that they're in. So now we're back to this stage, which is going dormant, right? Basal rosette, dropping the roots deeper into the ground, and as a result, it just has some solar panels, right? Of course, leaves are solar panels, right? If you want to know how to design the most perfect biodegradable organic solar panels that you could possibly think of, they're doing it. You're like, where's your plastic? Where's the squares?
Right.
You can't see it. You just make plastic squares, then you get it. So these leaves are really great. You see how there's like a sort of mildew on there? We don't necessarily want that one. So look, now we're doing what they do at farms that you don't get to see, and you just think it comes from heaven because it's wrapped in plastic, and you're like, oh, it's totally organic, yeah. Meanwhile, some guy was like pooping all over his hands. You don't know that. You don't need to know that. So this is garlic mustard leaves, which are edible. If you smell that scent, it kind of smells like wasabi, right? Or horseradish. So that tells you a million things about applications, right? When would you administer horseradish or wasabi as a medicinal? Congestion. Breaks up congestion. Maybe even when you smelled it, it opened up your sinuses, right? So the leaves are edible. They're, you know, really tasty. They're going to be most tasty now or in the spring, right? Which is fall to spring. That's the dormant period. That's when we want to harvest leaves because they're young. So dandelion in the spring is much better than in the summer after or when it's flowering. It becomes much more bitter, right? So you get the young greens. So
Wait, in the fall too?
Well, that's yes to the same answer. Because
always
we usually think spring and fall, but it's actually fall to spring. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the dormant period of that whole season. That's winter. It's before and after winter. But we usually think, oh, spring and then next year fall.
So is it just like flavor preference, like less bitter is better, just to
More palatable, but not necessarily more medicinal.
so it's the same all year round, basically, if you harvest it.
No.
The properties
the
of it.
more disgusting it tastes, obviously, the more chemistry it has. So if it's more bitter, it's going to be more medicinal for you.
Okay.
It just may be like get to the point where you're like, gosh, I just can't do this every day. But I ate garlic mustard for like 3 months straight, every single day, you know, in dishes. I just kept adding it. It's one of my favorite wild greens. So try a leaf.
It smells like garlic.
Yeah, try a leaf. Eat it. Eat it.
These ones have mildew on them.
That's mildew.
Yeah, it's not like any worse than anything that people buy at the grocery store, which is all full of mildew. And
I love garlic mustard. It
Oh,
is
do you?
delicious. Yes.
nice.
These are
Way to
full of
go.
mildew.
And you came to the right place.
I worked on an organic farm this past month.
Thank you.
That was it. I was like, it was a good experience.
Yeah, well, farming
Blooming,
is
have you
kind of
ever
like
been
getting
blooming
rid of
fields?
foraging and then working really hard.
Well, it taught me the
Working
importance
really
of
hard
how
is right.
everybody really does need to have their own garden, because how can we depend? This guy works so hard, and there's so much waste.
it's like
he's
for
like,
$2
he's like
vegetables,
harvest
yeah.
all the
Yeah.
that you can in one day, you know. And it's like, and then so much gets left there.
Yeah, but it all
Amongst
goes
other- a
back
whole
to
bunch
the
of other
soil.
things.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You are creating,
It was
you are
interesting.
generating
It was
a
hard.
culture. It
Yeah.
is very hard. It's very,
Very hard.
excessive work, and we all rely on it. I mean, that's so. It used to be that the
opened my
indigenous tribes, the women would process all the acorns all day and child rear together, and the men would go out and hunt, and they would come back, and that was the diet. And then as the wild lands got sort of mined. That's my land. Then the hunting capacity was reduced, and then men switched to farming. And at that transitional period was a self-domestication, because see, we think we domesticated plants, but we actually became domesticated by our diet, how it changed. And so that's when we basically became grain addicts, and that changed our whole physiology, that changed the way we can think, it changed the chemistry flowing through the body. So then we grew monocultures of grain, and we have miles and miles and miles of grain, wheat, instead of wild forest with chestnuts dropping down and deer running through it. So this is kind of like the pre-colonial versus post-colonial phenomena. And you can, there's a good documentary, there's a book called 1491, and then there's also a documentary on YouTube, which you can check out, called America Before Columbus. It's really amazing, because what indigenous people were doing here is doing like permaculture food forestry. Like they would be like, oh cool, it's a chestnut tree, and then they'd plant a certain percentage of chestnuts, and that's all they had to do, and then next year they'd come back and they'd be like, cool, the chestnut tree is producing 20,000 pounds of chestnuts per year because it's an old growth 10,000-year-old tree. And we're like, we came and we're like, cool, we need wood. Trees are not trees for food, trees are wood for building, and that's why we got here, because we had ships. And that's what happened in Europe. We started cutting down all the trees for one thing and one thing only.
Boats?
Yes.
Houses.
And then after that, metal, because we were smelting, because we needed weapons of war to kill each other. And indigenous people were like, we have no idea about weapons, like we use rocks. And we're like, cool, we have guns. And so it was no match. So what we did in Europe is we cut down all the forest, because at that time you would smelt in a fire pit and you'd need charcoal to get the metal hot enough to mold and shape into swords, etc. So a lot of it was cut the forest down, make charcoal, and then make weapons, and then kill each other and cut the forest down. That was kind of the industrial revolution of Europe. And then they were like, hey, we have no trees left. What do we do? And they're like, hey, there's this rumor of this place with all this gold and stuff. And they're like, let's go kill them. And we succeeded. Here we are. And so we're still using, though, European agricultural models in a place that was not meant for that. And that's why the forest is the way it is. So that's why you have all these now invasive weeds, right? Which is like, oh, garlic mustard's not supposed to be here. But it's like, neither are you, descendant of Christopher Columbus. So where do we start? You know, where do we start that game? And it's like, oh, cool, we'll target plants. Let's blame plants. Plants are definitely the problem here. If we could think about all the problems in the world, it's definitely plants. Not concrete or Walmart parking lots, but garlic mustard. Garlic mustard creates lack of biodiversity while I drive on the freeway.
Right.
So we have a lot of understanding into the new forest. What is the new way to cultivate land? And I think it would be a regenerative harvest of weeds. That the weeds are actually the cottage industry growing out of the ground. And if you, for example, make garlic mustard chips and put them in a bag, you could sell them for $14 a bag at the farmer's market, and that gives you a job, right? And whatever it is, all these invasive plants become all these materials and food sources, which nobody even realizes are food sources and materials. So that's kind of the revolution, is to turn the problem into the solution, and to jokingly say, oh cool, autumn olive, you don't like those? I'll remove them by you buying fruit leather from me for $15 a piece, because it's local, organic, and this and that, and wild harvested, and all that crazy nonsense. Yeah. So that's kind of the revolution that the plants.
It's a rainbow.
Oh yeah.
And the turkey vulture.
Yes. He's looking for something.
Floating.